Hi, my name's Scott Heron, and I'm giving you this snapshot talk about the Climate Vulnerability Index. On behalf of my colleague John Day, we want to thank the organisers for allowing us to provide this through a video recording as we're unable to attend the meeting in person. Climate change is impacting our heritage places and is growing at a faster rate than any other threat. In response, John and I worked together to develop an assessment tool that could assess climate vulnerability consistently across all types of World Heritage properties based on a systematic approach and framework that was proactive, not waiting for impacts to occur, but also being able to put those impacts into context for the various other pressures that heritage places are facing, as well as the context of governance structures and requirements upon places. Through the process, adaptation strategies to help with more effective management are identified, and this process provides a benchmark for monitoring and evaluation, and to be able to repeat the framework in the future to understand how different strategies may have been successful. So we call this the CVI, Climate Vulnerability Index, and it's values-based, science-driven and community focus. We begin with the foundation of the property values, we use the best available climate and societal data, and we undertake a participatory process. Drawing upon the IPCC's vulnerability framework used in the third and fourth assessment reports, we expand that to incorporate modifiers and to assess two elements, the OUV vulnerability, and then using that as an exposure term to the community, look at the community vulnerability. We've applied the CVI now in 19 World Heritage properties that span all 10 World Heritage criteria, putting our focus on the 6 cultural criteria. We can examine how different places have spanned those criteria and in one case have broached across the natural and cultural criteria within World Heritage. Our applications have ranged on properties from the size of 1.2 hectares to 3.6 million hectares, cultural, natural and mixed, urban, rural, marine, coastal and terrestrial. In our approach, we have focused the attention on these 15 climate stresses and invite participants to examine which of these climate stresses are most likely to have the greatest impact on the particular values identified for properties. To illustrate how this works, for Shark Bay, Western Australia, and you can see the report, the report cover on the right-hand side, the 3 identified most likely to impact the values of Shark Bay were long-term temperature change, short-term temperature events, in this instance particularly marine heat waves, and changes to storm intensity and frequency. Once I push the go button, you're going to see a populated set of rectangles on the left-hand side, the property names in the middle, and report covers on the right-hand side. And as you look through this, the 2 things that stand out for me are firstly that long-term changes in temperature as a threat are more likely to impact more places than any other climate stressor. However, it's also a key thing that I identify is the combinations of top 3 climate threats are different in every application to date. Climate change isn't impacting with a one-size-fits-all threat to our heritage places. It's inherently and intrinsically linked to the particular values. You may also note that from our list of 15, an additional one, wildfire, was added for one property. This is important to recognise that whilst our list of 15 was designed to cover the majority, we thought, of World Heritage properties, there's flexibility within the CVI process to allow for additional threats to be recognised. One example is the property Brigham, And you can see at the top of the screen there some of the World Heritage values that were derived from the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value. It's also important to realize that there are other values that would be significant in these places. We call them other significant property values that aren't listed inside the World Heritage document. Within the CVI, we recognize that these occur. We also recognize that these are likely to be impacted by climate change. In Brigham, these historical warehouses, some of which are undergoing restoration efforts, were the surface expression of the values. But hidden underground, there was also the archaeological history. In response to the CVI, some of the key identified actions were to inform the World Heritage Management Plan revision, the Disaster Risk Management Plan development, to identify a series of knowledge gaps that were needing to be addressed to better understand the impacts of future climate. It was also recognised there's very good cooperation in the research institutions, but a need to improve communication across different areas. The Sukkur cultural landscape is in northeastern Nigeria, just bordering on the Sahel, and the key values for this location are shown at the top of the screen, derived from the Statement of OUV. In this workshop, it was determined that some strategic tree planting was important to reduce the impacts of windstorms, and then also to undertake efforts to manage erosion of the terraces. Another key outcome from the workshop was the installation of a weather station and the training of local members of the community, the capacity building undertaken to take those weather measurements. On the coastline of Tanzania, the ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani and ruins of Songa Manara World Heritage Property reflects the history of that place through the expression of the buildings and remains of buildings and the archaeology present on the site. Key threats here included sea level rise and coastal erosion, as well as heavy rainfall events. And adaptation strategies were designed and discussed in response to those. The Antonine Wall is the northernmost frontier of the Roman Empire and forms one part, shown with the green arrow, of a World Heritage property. In this location, it's a turf wall with a stone foundation underneath. This location was added to an existing World Heritage property that has components in the north of England and in southern Germany. And in this instance, our attention was focused on the components of the property expressed only at the Antonine Wall. It's worth mentioning that there's current discussion going on for further application of the CVI in other parts of the broader cluster of properties that represent the frontiers of the Roman Empire. At the Antonine Wall, we can show the linkages between key values and threats from climate change using this rose plot diagram, and it points to the importance of rainfall as a part of the impactful elements in the property. When we also examined, and this was led by our partner Becky Jones in Scotland, the other two elements of this World Heritage property, the original frontiers of the Roman Empire property, there was a similarity in the threats from climate change at Hadrian's Wall, quite close by geographically, but a distinct difference when it came to the Upper German Rhaetian lemurs in the southern section of Germany. We've undertaken 4 applications in Scotland, which illustrate the range of climate threats identified, as well as the vulnerability levels assessed to the values and to the communities. Importantly, the range of adaptation strategies identified are customised to each location. And for example, in Orkney, there has been a limit to the number of cruise ships due to the links between visitation and increased rainfall in heavy events. In Edinburgh, An outcome from the workshop was the need for additional flood modelling to better understand future climate issues with flooding. The CVI has also been applied with Indigenous partners who identified changes due to climate change and impacting their land and sea country. In this area, we co-developed a process, traditional owner-led, that incorporates and integrates the various knowledge systems. Importantly, this is built on a foundation of relationship and trust and the use of appropriate language. As one demonstration, we took descriptions used in contemporary science and then mapped those across to terminologies more relevant to our particular partners in this work. And because of the respect for their intellectual property over this area, we're not showing those details, but we're working together with partners to determine what will be shown and when. We've also worked with Indigenous partners in World Heritage Places, and most recently in the Gondwana rainforests of Australia, preparatory meetings were held with each of the 3 Indigenous groups associated with that area. And we've followed up with those groups, including seeking their approval for what's being shared today in the outcomes from the workshop. In the CVI, we've also undertaken thematic analyses, recognising the urgency of the threat of climate change to help managers from multiple places understand better threats and linkages to other places. In this work, we identified 8 high-level thematic groups, and this was informed by the ICOMOS gap analysis and the ICOMOS scientific committees. We also examined environmental setting, the land use and land cover satellite data sets to understand the setting within which cultural heritage is located. Each of these studies have just been accepted for publication in the Journal of Cultural Heritage. So where next for the CVI? We've successfully applied in World Heritage properties, natural, cultural, mixed, marine, coastal, terrestrial, urban, rural, large and small. We want to enable more activity and more application. So with funding through the Getty Foundation, we have a project to develop documentation and conduct training for facilitators of the process. Our ultimate goal is to enable other places and peoples to use this, and that will lead to further testing and refining of the CVI process. And that means we're always looking for opportunities to partner with others. 3 times a year, we publish a 1-page PDF that can arrive in your inbox if you sign up using that QR code or via the website in the Updates tab. Our website also has all of our reports and our summary brochures available for people to look at and examine. And should you have any questions from this, John and I would really appreciate hearing from you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.